This is Sunday, June the 2nd, 2019, and with Professor Heikki Hanka, we are here at His Eminence, the Metropolitan of Joan of Korçë. Your Eminence, is it possible for us to record our discussion for the purpose of publishing that in the future?
We don't have secrets.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
In the time, I wouldn't agree. But now.
Your Eminence, you have been a member of these underground religious communities who discovered, became in a way, let's say, was proselytized to Orthodoxy back in communist times, and you kept practicing at conditions of extreme perils, as we have heard you talking in the panel. But would you like to tell us a little bit more about your personal story in the course of communism and how you converted?
I already said something that the story of every human being is one. So you cannot separate with different departments, because one part of your life will be connected to the next. As I told you that I was part of a very big family. We were 8 children. I am the youngest. And as a child, I was very happy in the family. My father was a very honest and devoted man. And my mother was so much a woman of sacrifice and love for all. Although she had hard work, still she found time to take care for all of us. In the time we couldn't see clearly. After I understood that it was almost impossible what she did. So they created a very warm atmosphere. And so this made me happy. And like all the children, I like to read. In the time were not so many books like today. But sometimes when you have thirst, you don't have water. And if you have water, you lose the thirst. Today, people have a lot of books, but they don't read more. In the time, we used to read everything that we find. And I didn't have let's say, a concrete religious experience as a child. But still, as a child, I believed in all these other things, reading different fairy tales, legend, and this was part of this. And during the period that I was in high school, all this joy started to be cool a little bit. Because you start to read books a little bit, you think they are more serious, but they are more depressed.
In what books. High school did you attend?
In Tirana, Partizani, Gymnasia Partizani. And all this puts in your mind a lot of doubts. Maybe you think that everything that you believed as a child is not well based, and all these things. And during this time I was studying French. And in the 4th year of my high school, a friend of my brother, he said that I have a book in French. He didn't know what kind of book. I will bring to you. And he brought me the Gospel.
The New Testament?
The New Testament. Already, and now I have this, this Gospel. Mm-hmm. And when I read this book, I felt like my childhood was coming back. The same feelings. So I was thanking the book, bringing back my childhood and bringing back the joy. And sometimes there are some things that I call psychological truths. The way how it was written, or at least the way how I perceived everything, I was convinced that it's the truth inside. And so started my spiritual journey. And every journey of each person is a kind of adventure. You never know where will go. Because I never thought what happened in my life that will happen. So you start a new path. And I was in contact with a man, he was a well-known translator, Petroje, and a man of faith.
How did you come in contact with Petroje?
My cousin knew him,
Okay.
so he introduced, and a friend of mine.
Did you get to know him in the context of your spiritual
Yes,
journeys?
yes,
or-
in that. So
Which means that your cousin also had...
maybe a little bit vague in his, but he was more interested, let's say, in these books, knowledge or this. But one of my friends, with whom I was discussing about religion, and I gave to him and to read the gospel in Albanian after I founded many books. And he knew also Petroje, so I was introduced. And we started to talk and develop a friendship. And through Petroje, I knew Thofan Popa. And Thofan Popa had some friends, let's say a kind of underground church, who were 3 sisters in Korca. 2 were sisters in blood, but they called the 3 sisters in faith. And they had a connection with Father Cosma, the priest that baptized me. And there weren't a few other people. I didn't know that maybe were some other groups. For sure they were. But we were not well organized, let's say. It was not the structure of the church.
Allow me to go a step backwards, because I'm trying to imagine a world in which people may come at all pretensions to people like Petroje. So how was he convinced that you had a genuine spiritual interest rather than you were, a potential spy or somebody who had an interest in? How did he do that? Did you sense that there was some sort of a suspicion initially?
I never thought about these things, and I had the impression that then he didn't. So the discussion was so genuine, and I never thought in my mind that maybe I would be in danger. And I have the impression maybe he didn't. But we never discussed in that. Although with many other people I had that, I was aware that it's a danger. Maybe because this is my friend and this other, they knew very well him. So I didn't meet him by chance. So it was a kind of, I was introduced.
Was he suspicious, or the fact that you had a common friend was a guarantee that was sufficient?
I think maybe this is the main thing. But after we developed a friendship, discussing and all these things.
Were you the only so-called novice of that kind, or were there similar cases?
Now all these terms, novices, and this maybe can misguide you because it was not like a structured. So the people were not so much cared about these things. They didn't care about these things for official way because didn't exist the structure. I had and other friends that I discussed about this that were in my age. Was
before or after 1967 this was?
Always after, because in 1967 I was 11 or 12 years old. So, but during the time that I was in high school, I had a lot of friends, and we discussed different things. For sure, in one way existed a kind of political dissidence. So we're not happy with the government, because we're almost grown up now. We knew, we understood that it was a dictatorship, no freedom. And it was a kind of complaining and discussing, not with everybody, with few. But mostly discussing about books, some movies, art, and all these things. So in one way, all these things helped me, at least me, to understand better and deeper faith. Because nothing can be completely outside the faith and art. Art is part of the temple. Was born in the temple and was developed in the temple. So they're interconnected in one way. So the discussion was not strictly speaking about religion, but discussing for everything. Philosophy, as much as we could find books about philosophy, thoughts, different discussions. What I understood after, not in the time, because when you leave you don't make to analyze things, but after, was a kind of thirst, looking for something. And after many years, I understood well what was I looking for.
So am I right to assume that your path towards Orthodox spirituality came as part of your intellectual journey, intellectual curiosity that eventually led
Not strictly speaking, but was part of this, was not only intellectually, but spiritually asking. But in that time, the discussion was not so much for this particular religion or this other or this, because every religion was persecuted. So in one way you were a friend for every religious man, regardless what he believed, in which faith. So it was a unique time. So the people who were or the people that had this faith, they didn't care so much to which faith you belong. So you are allied to them because you are part of the same group, let's say, that because the main enemy was atheism and the militant atheism. So the stories about different religions and this was a kind, let's say, of a common heritage. So I read many books because was not something that we could choose. Every kind of book that we were able to find, we read. Roman Catholic books, from Protestant background, whatever. If they were talking about religion, we were very eager to read. So in one way it was a kind of spiritual journey to find something. The connection with the Orthodox Church, maybe I think it's more, let's say, historically or culturally speaking, coming from the southern Albania, where the Orthodox Church is part of it. So in one way, Christianity was understood like Orthodox Christianity, but not with the eye that I see today. So in the first years, I never thought these boundaries were structured. So you can move in the boundaries just because you talk about these things. And slowly, after you have a general view of faith, for sure you need something more structured. And I don't think that I choose the Orthodoxy. The Orthodoxy chose me, let's say, in one way. So the contact that I had was with this. And this came very naturally. So it came like something that will be like this. There was no other, in the time, and now I don't have nothing against others, but in the time we never thought about this. For sure, the Orthodoxy maybe it's more close to our, not only history, but the mentality. All this region were for centuries Orthodox. So our culture was shaped by this. So you felt like you have something already known before. It was not a foreign thing. So it didn't come in the structured way. And I am mentioning many times that structured way came more naturally. And the first contact that was, like I told you, was the contact with the gospel.
Will you turn back, let's say, to these early formative years of your spiritual journey, Your Eminence, to ask whether you were aware of the dangers that
Yes.
were there, and whether others, you felt that others were also aware of dangers?
For sure, everybody was aware for this, but like
What
we
sort of
mentioned,
dangers were there?
the danger can be that if you are caught with the gospel, you will be at least 8 to 10 years in jail, doing nothing other, just caught with the gospel. So everybody knew that. But if you discover and you begin to taste the truth and the beauty of the gospel, the danger is seen in another way. In the sense that reading Life of Martyrs, so the danger is not seen only something, let's say, a disaster for you. Slowly you start to prepare to face in this. I was not looking for that. But I was not afraid. And I can tell you a story. One night, I was with Petroje. We went to this church in Lach. Shenanoi, it's called. But over there, according to the local tradition, was the cave on St. Blaise was there. And it was a holy place in one way. And that night, we were caught over there. It was a group of police and volunteers. And so we were asked, they took all our names, addresses, everything. And we thought maybe after a while, maybe we'll be arrested. And 1 week after was a meeting in the work that I was working in hospital. And I never went in these meetings. And somebody came and sent the director and the people that came from the government or what was, they are asking for you to come. And I thought that maybe they will call me for what happened in this church. And from the place that I was working until the place of the meeting, I was thinking what we'll say to them. And in the end, I decided with myself always, I don't know what will happen over there, but I decided I will tell the truth. I will say, yes, I believe. That happened. When I came over there, it was a different story. The director had proposed me for a decorate, so a medal for good service to the people. But I never was in the position to test myself, let's say, the front.
How was it possible for a journey of this sort to be undertaken? To leave Tirana, to go, I imagine that there were a number of post blocks that you had to pass, you and Petroje. How did you pass these? What was it? Where were you going?
No, but
were you not stopped?
We found it something maybe unique, special, let's say, because we didn't have many choices. We used to go where the churches were before, to light a candle, to prayer, to do all these things. But doing all these things, I discovered something. That all these journeys, and we used to go by foot.
On foot? So
yes.
You went from Tirana to Lach on foot?
Foot.
How long did it take?
As a kind of pilgrimage. And I discovered something. Maybe we all are pilgrims. And maybe the position of pilgrims put you in the optimal position. In the first years, I didn't explain it that way. I felt, but I couldn't articulate why. Now I know why. Why was so much joy in this? Just when you do a journey as a pilgrim. So you start to understand that life has a meaning and an end. So it's a final destination. And the pilgrimage is like this. You have a final destination to meet a holy thing or something. So this it gives to you a clarity of mind. And I remember during all these journeys, we stopped somewhere, eating something we had prepared for ourselves, or reading some psalms. You felt something completely different. So then we started to love this. But many times, going to these places were dangerous. I didn't think in that time so much about danger. Maybe
was your family aware of these trips, of these pilgrimages?
My brother maybe knew something, but I didn't tell them.
So did they not understand that you were missing overnight and then the following day you
No,
were back?
but I wasn't grown up in the time, so it was not
They did not.
some. But I can tell something. I remember my nephew, the son of my sister, one day, and he was in the kindergarten.
Marine?
No, another. Of my Marine is of my brother. And he saw a book. It was a prayer book. And the book had a big cross in the cover. And he went to my mother, to his grandmother, to my mother, and said, "Why the uncle have a book of the bad people?" Because what propaganda that was done in the kindergarten, and all this always, or movies, so always the priest was something, the evil in the movies, or in everything. But he didn't say nothing outside. And I joke many times when I see him now. I mention that you see how strong was propaganda. And sometimes the people can spy you, not always, but sometimes maybe thinking doing something good, discovering an enemy. But the most of the spies, they didn't for that. They did to profit something from envy or different what other had in mind. And like in every dictatorship were a lot of spies all over.
So am I right to assume that in a way you exorcised fear of what could possibly be the consequence in case you were caught by going to these places? So
I think it was something, although it's very hard to, because nothing is just one thing. Like a human life, it's a complex of many things. I think maybe was a mixture, first, of this thirst for God. You have to do something. And the liturgy is something you have to express in one way, this. The joy that was during all these trips. And for sure, sometimes maybe can be a part and to test yourself. So you are doing something for your faith. But it's not only one of these. It's a kind of mixture of this. Seeing from now, retrospective. Because during the time I never thought about these things. I was not thinking about all of these things. We went because we enjoyed that.
So it was an adventure.
It was an adventure combined with many, and it's something very important. The joy is not only something that is related to the character or the temperament of the people. I believe is a gift from God. And the gift comes through His presence. Now, I cannot feel the same joy doing all these things. Still, but not the same, or with the same intensity that it was at the time. And for the reason that I don't understand, maybe God gives something and to strengthen you. And this moment of joy, and as I told you, a kind of clarity of mind, you start to understand some things that it's not only just from studies. You touch something other. I understood like touching another reality. And by touching this, you start to see things more clear than before. And all this for sure gives to you a thirst to have more. Maybe I think this was that we used to go always. It came a time that I couldn't stay 1 month without going in some other place, because there was no other way how to. Maybe there were other ways, but each one has its own way of doing this. So there are different ways, although it's the same way. Like our different people, but it's still the same. So we are similar, but still we are distinct. So it's something that each one has his unique path, and still is the same path. And this is a miracle maybe from God. So we are all humans, and we share the same nature. But still we are unique. Saint Gregory the theologian said that to say human beings in plural, it's heresy. It's only one human being and millions of persons. So we share the same being, but still we are different. Like the Holy Trinity. They have the same being, but there are 3 persons.
Or fingerprint. Everybody has fingerprint.
From the paranoia that led to the 1967 events, and especially the destruction of the religious heritage of. Do you remember much? Let's say.
Yes, I remember, but not so much. But I remember. I remember because it was and a lot of propaganda in school. So we had a class, let's say atheism. 1 hour against faith. Books was published. Always the priests were very bad, or other clergy of other religions. So this was every week. You had a class of atheism. So you are aware about the war and persecution that is done. You heard many things. People arrested for this or for that. So everybody knew this. We are a small country. So it's not a...
Have you experienced something in your neighborhood, in your house?
Yes, many people that we knew, they were arrested. In exile.
Did the party or the quarter front ask people to surrender any objects that they might have held at home? Or
yes, but not in every. In Tirana was a little bit different because was a little bit more mixed people. So I don't think that people had many things in their. They asked only the institutions, you see, churches, mosques, to give, not people in general, so to give. And if they had some suspicions for some people, they did controls, so the people were afraid, or destroyed themselves something, or they put in some place not to be found, or they gave to the others that were more able to hide these things. Because in one way, the people, they know that you believe or not. You cannot hide completely. I will tell you something. I never said, let's say, to the people that I were in work about my beliefs, but everybody knew. They knew by your behavior.
Meaning?
Meaning the way you behave, how you treat the patients, how you treat the other people. They understand that it's something different, that it's something. So in one way they knew, because they told me many times.
What did they tell you?
No, asking that you believe in this. To some people that I trusted, I said yes. To others, maybe I didn't answer.
And at the same time, you kept the objects,
Yes,
I suppose that the French Bible you had to return at some point.
This book in French was given to me because I didn't know French.
It was a present.
No. And meeting different people that had some faith. So I was able to find other books.
What other books, for example?
For example,
you mentioned a prayer book before.
Old Testament was very difficult to be found, and New Testament you couldn't find because we were published and in Albanian. There were a lot of publications, but of the Old Testament, no. And maybe this came through a kind of, you can say, miracle or whatever you can say. I was in the National Library, and during the time I was so much interested in all these ancient languages, maybe related to this spiritual journey in one way. And I was did this request. I don't know. Maybe you remember the old system in libraries.
Yes, with cards, library cards.
Yes, yes. And it was a book of Champollion. And the book came. The clerk, during this time, came a friend of her, and she started to talk with her friend, and was filling and gave me the book without seeing the book. When I was outside, I opened the book, and was the whole Bible in French. I have this. And now, maybe now it's time to give back, and I don't know. But they never asked me why you didn't give back. Maybe the clerk were afraid why they gave. I don't know what happened. But this book is still in my office. In a strange way. And this has convinced me that if you really love something eagerly, God will find a way how to provide to you. The problem sometimes it's not with God, it's with us. We ask, but we are not asking. We fake like we are searching, but we are not. Because the Lord himself had promised, seek and you will find. But sometimes we're not serious in seeking. Mm-hmm. And for sure, episodes like this, in this journey, you'll have hundreds, so it's not.
I'm sure that, especially now, with your quality as Metropolitan of Korçë, you have heard of people who kept various objects and of people who somehow, at some point in the course of the middle 60s, let's say, they had to make choices. What objects to surrender, to give, so that, people say, okay, Heikki handed over all what he had, and what objects, let's say, would you make a suggestion, what objects would people keep and for what reasons?
I think mostly they kept a cross that has a family history, given by grandfather or grandmother or whatever, or they had some stories about this. They kept icons, because at least in the Orthodox communities, always the icon was very important. It's a kind of symbol of their faith in one way, or a visible sign of their faith. And they had the images of their parents or grandparents always to light the candle in the icon. So for them the icon was a kind of symbol of faith, of their faith. And they kept many icons. And many icons wasn't part of the family, maybe from generations. Many were destroyed, sometimes and by people themselves, because they were afraid if somebody will see. It was dangerous. And the danger was not only for you, it was for the whole family and the cousins. So it's, this was something diabolic from the government. They knew that the people, if they would have to pay only by themselves, maybe they would resist. But you cannot make the others paying for you. It's a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So people were afraid to do many things because you'll punish your brothers, sisters, cousins.
So were these religious objects that were kept of any material value?
No, I don't think that they were aware about the values in the sense that they see today.
Okay.
For them, didn't matter so much. It was a masterpiece or some paper icon was the same almost. So they didn't have that. Maybe some people that knew better, maybe they appreciated or evaluated more that way. But the most of the people, they didn't see in that way. And the people that were the faithful people, for them, the value of icon was not like we see today as a piece of museum. What was this icon represent was seen more like this. But for sure, there are different people, and they see in different way many things. Some maybe they knew the value of icon because there were some generations in the house, let's say. But the people that I knew or I was in contact, they saw always mostly as a part of their faith than the material value of this.
So,
and when they knew, so the value is not in the because it's old or this, it's in what the icon represents for them.
So family history and faith.
Yes.
Which reminds me, Heikki, of this nice icon of the Uspensky Cathedral where you officiated in, which is basically a paper icon that was evacuated, and it struck my attention. It was a miraculous icon, and people kept it regardless of this being, let's say, a paper icon, so it had basically no material value. And I was stunned of the story that at some point it was burnt. I can't remember the dates. It's in the recordings.
And then stolen.
And stolen.
A couple of years ago. And found in the forest or something like that.
It was found again today.
And myself, we came once to these sisters in Korça, Cica, and they were a little bit afraid because they had many icons. And they gave...
When was that?
In 80s, but I don't remember the...
Before Enver Hoxha's death, or?
I think maybe before.
So it was in the first part of the 80s, the first half of the 80s.
And was a big sack with icons. So we took from Korça in Tirana. The major part of this icon was kept by Petro. Some of them were kept by me. But when I left Albania, I don't know where most of them they were lost. When I came back, I didn't find in many of my books. So.
Were they kept by Petrozei?
No, I think maybe we gave to people. So we didn't keep just for us. We gave to the people too. But I don't know what happened after with all these icons.
The fate of them.
Can you recognize them if you see?
No, there's so many years, and we didn't see mostly with to see the details. So it's.
A while ago you mentioned that in a way you felt that you were to be treated as dissidents. I wanted to ask you two questions here.
No, maybe we didn't use that name, but for sure was a kind of opposing the political party that was. Because religion, by constitution, was called a crime. So you already were...
Could I ask what your definition of dissidence is?
Now, if we see the etymology of the word, it means that you don't agree, you are against something. And in that the general understanding, yes, you can say in that way. In different countries, maybe you have some particulars, because it's related with some people that were part of the party and after. But in my understanding, it's dissidence is all opposition of, and was not a violent opposition. Dissidence is one of the characteristics. It's not a violent opposition. So you are not taking guns and fighting. Maybe you will be a rebel or whatever, but the dissidence was you don't agree with this kind of policy or ideology or everything, and you make a resistance, visible or sometimes not so much visible.
Would you say that your spiritual journey was an outcome of your disagreement with the policies of the regime, the government?
No, I think my family was against the regime. So, and this helped me. In what sense? That, so for me, always religion was something positive because it was against the government, let's say. So
and you had the backing of the family.
Yeah, you know, and for that. But the spiritual journey was something more personal. Was not something related to the family or. They were not practicing because it was no practice of religion. For sure, they were not against religion, always mentioned God or something, but in general. But their life showed that they have kept the, let's say, the commandments of, but it was not a kind of public discussion. So the discussion was with a small group of friends.
Was this a shared feeling? I understand that you mentioned that your family was probably a family of dissidents, although they were not, they were rather covered, or they kept, let's say, their convictions for themselves. But did Petrov and the others in these underground, the underground church that you described, did they feel that the activity was dissident? Did they pursue that on account of dissidence, or it was purely a matter of faith, regardless of how it could be viewed externally?
I think maybe it's mostly the second, but for sure, and the first part. But we didn't or we're not involved to articulate what is this. It was just you are living. You can live, and without articulate what is life. So it was a natural part of this. We never thought. Maybe the scholars can see now that, if you see as a scholar this, but we never discussed in that. For sure, we all felt that we are against, and we were aware that this is something against. Well, this was clear to everybody. It's not, but I don't think that was a kind of, let's say, in one way, it was a kind of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody may be expressed another way, and what we discussed before, this going these holy places, or this, okay, it was a kind of a resistance. So we didn't agree with what was happening in Albania. We didn't agree how the people were treated, with all these political prisoners and all this torture and everything that was done. For sure, that we discussed many times about this.
Were these tortures known, or you could have the privilege to see them in the...
Some were, because we had cousins, we were people of family, so this was part of every family. Sometimes, in the communist families, maybe the parents, they did discuss about these things. Maybe they knew. Because not every communist was bad. Like not every dissident was good, let's say. The things are a little bit more mixed. And I told the story for this director of hospital at where I was working. I was not aware. But after, I met the secretary of party of hospital in the United States. And he told me a story. I will tell you that because he was old now and he's passed away. He said when these people of Sigurimi used to go somewhere to arrest somebody or to control or everything, always will be in their company the director of the and the secretary of party. So they had a discussion. And maybe somebody has reported that I had a Bible in my closet. I didn't know this story. And the director, he didn't allow them. No, said, he's my best worker here. Because what was required in the approval of director, and not of every director. This director had a very strong connection with the party. One of his uncles was a member of the Politburo. And his cousin was the director of police of Tirana. And he didn't allow them. And he was a communist. But after I discovered that he was a cousin of one of these, Pedro Giovelli, was somebody from Imara, that we were part of this, let's say, underground church.
So he was?
Yes, and Pedro Giovelli.
My next question would have been exactly this, so whether you knew of somebody who was a communist and at the same time participating in this underground.
Pedro Giovelli was. I don't know for this director, but I know that he had this cousin. And if he was not part...
Giovelli was a faithful, from the coastal religion.
And he used to translate many of these things, religious literature, because it was very hard to find. And all these translations sometimes were sent to these Tsitso sisters and to others. So, and if he was not part, that I don't think that maybe he was part of this group, this director, but still he knew something about his cousin. So the things are not black and white. And it's very hard to judge. So it's...
Was there somebody who was known to have communist political convictions and at the same time he was a sympathizer towards underground religious communities?
I had a friend of mine, we're the same age, now he's in Vienna. He came from a very strong communist party member. His father, mother, his family was connected with and they had the high positions in the party. But for reasons that nobody knows, always, he became a religious man. And he is another case. One of the parents wanted to send him in psychiatry.
He was sent to a psychiatry.
Was sent only for a few days, but I don't know, they were afraid. Maybe they thought that there's something wrong with him. I don't know, but as I told you in this panel, that I remember that the children brought her father once in psychiatry, and he was not sick. I tried to help him not to take medicine, because sometimes medicine can destroy you.
Absolutely.
All these electroshocks and all these others, and so. And he was, and in one discussion that I had with his son, I told him that he's not sick. Why? And he confessed to me. We know that he's not sick, but we were afraid because he started to talk in the village about religion. And to protect all the others, we brought here. I don't know what happened with him now, because...
Tragic stories, yes. How often did these underground religious, or the underground church that you were part of, how often did you meet?
It was not a kind of, let's say, regular meetings. For people that were in Tirana, I met frequently.
How frequently?
Maybe, let's say, they were my friends, some of them every day.
Okay.
People that were a little bit far away, like Tsitso sisters, maybe 3 times a year or something. And communion was like this. Sometimes he did the liturgy in his house,
Father
Cosma, and he brought he used to come in another house in Vlora, let's say. And we went over there and take communion.
But was it easy to travel from Tirana to Flora without any lesion?
No, I don't think that was difficult to go, because Vlora was not more difficult. It's in the cities close to the border.
Mm-hmm.
They will think maybe you want to escape or whatever, but in these cities, no, I don't think that is.
And were these meetings, that you have known by others or suspected by others?
I don't know for sure. My friends, they knew, but I don't know well. And maybe this is one of the reasons that I want to
see the
to archives. It's more a curiosity now. I'm not so much curious about this, but to understand better this can now tell us if it was known or not.
Mm-hmm.
But for sure, like I told you this story, that if they came to control, it means that somebody has told.
Yes, definitely. If they knew that you kept a job, let's say, at the closet of the work, a book of prayers, or something of the sort.
I myself had an explanation, because I used to talk about religion with all my friends. And I think maybe I was saved because I worked in psychiatry. And because many other people thought there's something wrong with him. I used to serve myself to the patients, to wash them, to cut the nails, to help them with everything. And this was seemed like the people like director, like I told you, that were well educated, they understood that it's something related to the religion, to do these things. But the other people understood in one way. So maybe they didn't see a danger, or they saw many times me in company with the people that were with mental problems. I tried to help them. I used to take them, for example, one day off the hospital and go in Tirana, visiting something, to give them a little bit more, not to stay. So all these things that I thought that I helped them, maybe they helped me more. Still is a supposition, I am not sure, but I have thought many times that maybe they didn't see a danger, because I talked a lot about this during this time, more than now.
It was audacious at the time, I suppose. Today, this morning, we were having an interview with somebody who had a direct and an indirect experience. You know him, Pastor Holger Dasi. He's in Korça, and he told us, of some correspondence that he saw between Ligor Chino and Edwin Jakes, in which he used Ligor used a language that was in a way symbolical and at the same time explicit. For example, he quoted this example that he would write to Jakes, mentioning, "We keep reading the Old and the New," meaning the Old Testament and the New Testament. So I was wondering, in your communication with other members, public communication,
I think in every, not only for us, but in many discussions, was a kind of code.
Could you possibly share us some of the...
No, it's hard to understand everything, but always we talked about some, not directly. And the letters we never wrote directly. You can say, for example, I met the uncle maybe was Pater Cosma, or things like that. It's always this.
Do you remember any concrete phrases? This
Yeah,
uncle.
we should find I should find the letters. The letters they sent to me and the letters they sent to them. So the letters we always use, but and in the not only in the letters, but in discussing with. Sometimes you use with somebody that maybe you didn't trust. Maybe you use a kind of code. Not only us, it was for everybody. Because always you have to hide something. And the code is a way to hide things. And to be understood without other people seeing what you really are discussing. But I cannot say for everything now because I never pay so much attention. I paid so much attention about these things to record and do.
The problem is that those codes are normally shared by initiated people.
Yes.
And
yes, because we told them that when I mentioned uncle,
yeah,
it's this. So
yeah, because if I think about the future and heritage, it means that we have a lot of material which is full of codes that nobody can anymore open.
Yes.
You still have those letters in your.
Some maybe, yes, maybe some, but they have to.
Maybe you can find one or a couple of them and try to
see.
To say whether some codes, some of the codes.
And I don't know what happened with the letters that Tsiso, sister, had. I left in 1990. If I was here, maybe I had all these things, but now it's.
The reason why, you know that Vasilis Kaskadems has made a book about Theophan Popa.
Yes, I know.
And in that book he also published some of the correspondence of Theophan Popa with the sisters.
Yes.
But there, you know, Vasilis Kaskadems has intervened into the text and has filled the brackets with what he thought was what Theophan Popa meant.
I wrote maybe the introduction or something?
I think so.
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
You wrote, in one of the editions, you wrote the introduction. But what I could not understand from a methodological standpoint is how he reconstructed, you know, this text.
I don't know.
And therefore, I think that if...
Maybe I have to read again and to see all this, what they meant with this.
Because he opened square markets, he filled it with references to God and, you know, with God's help. And I'm not sure whether, you know, to what extent this is, it may well be accurate, it might be well be implied, but
I don't know.
I think it would be an interesting thing at some point, you know, to develop something like, you know, how this religious symbolism developed in times of crisis.
No, it's very interesting, but like I told you, we never thought in the time. We didn't see as a history. It was living. And when you live it, you don't pay so much attention. After you see
so there was no plan, in a way, to create a symbolical language so that it
was a
came
need.
naturally.
Was a need.
And an adaptation to that need, rather than, you know, to... So it's not like the military, you know, invents a code so that, you know, they do not get intercepted. And did you make any efforts to attract new members, you or somebody else, to attract new members?
For sure, always. Always.
That must have been quite an endeavor, you know. It's, because practicing, let's say, you know, you could have been blamed for...
But for this reason I say that maybe these people in psychiatry helped me more than I helped them. Maybe they thought there's something wrong. And I have heard that before, that something wrong with him. Because it was not normal at the time to discuss about these things.
So how did people like you try to attract new members to these undergrounds?
I didn't have a plan. Let's say that we'll go to do this. But with everybody there was in contact in one way. I opened discussion about these things with patients many times to give more peace, to try to help them. But not, I was not doing a propaganda for really I tried more to help them to understand something. For sure, with my friends, we discussed. Because if you start to see something and to believe something, you want to share with others, and mostly with your friends. And a group that were close friends of mine, for sure, we share books. So when I had the Bible, I gave it to them to read. We found another book about religion, I gave to them, they gave to me. So it was a kind of sharing things. And many of them had the same, let's say, beliefs like I had. And the other people, I tried to discuss, to open this discussion about, but not, let's say, with a structured methodology to convert them.
So it was not catechism?
No, not in that way, but it was impossible in that way. But with people that I was in contact, inside my family, cousins, friends, always giving the gospel to read, it was dangerous. And maybe one of them has told them that.
This guy keeps. Did you succeed in bringing somebody, in these meetings?
Yes. Sometimes with the people you never thought that was something.
I meant you were part of the gatherings with Petroze and some others, Did somebody else come out of your enjoyment, come and...
Yes, but was not everybody, because it was a process. It was not like, for example, you talk this year and in the end of the year you will come for communion or to be baptized or something, because it was very hard and to find priests to baptize. It's not so...
Where were you baptized, by the way?
I was baptized in Vlora, in Bestrova, in
his village?
In his house.
So was there a baptismal font?
Yes, with all. Only were 3 people. The priest, me, and Petroze.
Who was your godfather, I suppose?
And one of the sons of Pater Cosma was staying outside to see if somebody will come or whatever. He's a priest now, Pater Ilia.
Did you regard yourself as the early church people who were persecuted?
Yes, in one way, yes. And I remember when I visited for the first time the catacombs in Rome, and the place where baptized was underground, and I felt like it was the same smell. So to me, I was so much moved when I visited for the first time the catacombs. So it was this idea of a cave or whatever is underground. But because it was a real church of catacombs, but maybe not so well organized, because it was a lack of priests, so people were afraid. Sometimes I remember, without mentioning the names in the place, we met a priest, very old priest, and his wife, and we were discussing, and I saw always his wife making signs that be silent, because we're afraid. So it's...
At the time, a priest that was the...
Yes. He was not more with uniforms. Starting from 1967 was abolished any kind of religion, so you couldn't have the dress.
There's a question, let's say, that I wanted to that pertains to gender. It is driven perhaps by the constitution of the panel, where the majority, let's say, were male. But was it this underground religious communities, were these mostly comprised of men, or were the women equally?
But I think it depends from the place. In Korça, there were many women, and more than men.
Okay.
In the city of Korça.
Are they alive now?
Maybe one of them is Vasilika Yakova, it's still alive. In Tirana, we didn't have a woman, let's say. Maybe were someplace, but I didn't
I see.
meet. So it depends from the... Because in Korça was traditionally a community, so they kept something.
But why? Yeah, I suppose that as a tradition, it would have been a tradition for men as well. Why in Korça you think that there was a majority of women?
But I think not only in Korça, in many places the women were more faithful. I don't, maybe it's something that belongs to women. They feel something more strongly than... And in the gospel, all these women, they stayed with the Lord. And with the apostle were afraid. And they left him. This mirror for us, mirror bearing women. So they... maybe... And the pressure were more stronger towards men. The woman was seen like less dangerous. So there are some other, but they kept in the faith, or they expressed more. Maybe they expressed more. The men were more reserved. There are many reasons. But I knew a lot of women that kept the faith.
Have you kept some of the, your old Bible? Your old Bible, you told us that you kept it.
I have this New Testament, the Old Testament I have.
Have you also kept some of the objects that you used at that
No,
time?
a lot of them were
lost
when I left here. I was missing for 5 years in Albania. So
and what does this Bible mean to you today? This particular Bible. Now, of course, as a Metropolitan, you have lots of Bibles.
It's more. It's a kind of. It's an emotional relation. So always that you have this in your hands reminds you. And I have read mostly, I remember I knew almost all Revelation almost by heart in French. And from 1990 until now, I never have read Revelation. Maybe very short things. During this time was a very beloved book. Maybe it's a book of hope. Speaks to you very strongly that the last word belongs to God. And you see the history, it's a happy end. With all the troubles that you read, but in the end, is the Lord that will come.
So would you argue that eschatological matters were more felt in times of
persecution? Yes, in time of persecution, yes. And I think in the time of persecution you can understand much better the book. Because now most of the people, they stop in silly things. 666, 7 horns, or whatever they try to show. In the time of persecution, you maybe understand the spirit of the book. A book of hope. The last word in history belongs to God, not to the evil. So the Revelation is not a book about the evil or 666. It's a book about God and the Lord. Mm-hmm. At least this was my feeling when I was reading the book during the time. But now I don't read more.
Was this a personal approach, or in discussions with others they also felt the same?
No, I think it was my personal experience with this. Maybe the others have the same, but I remember that during this time I used to read it. But I never saw it was a scary book, like now they represent in all this thing. I never saw it in that way. Always was this hope that in the end every evil thing will finish.
And what do you think the young generation thinks about objects like your Bible and objects that belong to the communist past that were kept in there? Is there some association? Do they have an understanding, or?
If they have some personal connection, in the sense, not personal, but with their parents or something, maybe they will feel something. And it depends from each one. Maybe will have a different feeling about this. For some, maybe it doesn't mean nothing. It's just an old book. So it depends.
Yes, it fits with the response that Pelushi girl, gave, that I come from that family, and therefore these are. So it's a matter of personal.
Yes, but always in faith, although it's the same faith, it's something very strong, personal. Because without that, you will not have faith. It's you in relation with God. It's not just a group. It's always you. If you lose that, I think you start to lose the faith. And you will be bounded only by rules. You don't have more a living faith. A living faith is always personal. It's a relation between you and God. But not divided by the others, in the sense that you're separated by the others. It's the same faith, but still it's a personal thing. And maybe this is the reason why in the Revelation it said that I will give a stone and it will be his name. So it will be a personal name for each one. And if we don't have this personal connection, the faith is not strong. It's a kind of, you just belong to a tribe, to a group. And you start to prejudice all the others. You don't belong to this group, you are the other. You start, all these things come from this kind of faith. It's a kind of dead faith without a personal experience. And without personal experience, the book will be closed. Or these rules will be a kind of chains for you. Will not give you freedom without this personal experience. And you never will understand this. But we need the book because our mind can go wild. We need some boundaries. So both of them are very important. Like St. Basil said, that the dogma are necessary to protect us from our mind. So we need dogmas, but without personal experience you cannot understand dogmas. So in faith you need both of them. You need the doctrine, but you need the personal experience with God, with different levels. Everybody has his own way.
That is very mind-opening if you compare the situation to the Finnish one, which is how to evacuate the property from the Karelia. And they are personal stories, but in most cases it is that there's a congregation and the connection to the old congregation. And if they have items that comes from the old congregation, they feel something. It's a question of identity. So then it is a question that we are here and those are there. It's a little bit same as this is a personal. This is inside me, that inside and outside.
The problem is that these two are not against each other. They should be together. They are both of them. Like I said, we need a doctrine and we need a community. But this cannot be a real community without these personal experiences.
Absolutely.
We will not understand each other more. If you have a personal experience of divine, of religion, for sure you understand the other. And not everybody has in the same level. It's not necessary, but you understand what's going on. So you love more the others, and you'll be more connected to the others. And the other is not more other, because you share something in common. And this sharing is always through our personal experiences, not only just intellectually. For sure, this helps. We are not against this, but it's not enough, only this. To have a strong faith, you need both a sound doctrine and the personal experience of this. Because although the doctrine will be something very dry, sometimes you can articulate, but you don't understand what. Because the word God, everybody knows, and maybe nobody knows. It's a story maybe told by Cicerone, when the tyrant of Syracuse asked the philosopher Simonides, "What is God?" And he started to talk and he said, "Give me 1 day." After 1 day he said, "Give me 2 days." After 2 days he said, "Give me 1 week." And the tyrant was furious and said, "You are playing with me?" "No," he said, "but as much as I want to say what is, I begin to understand that I don't know." So sometimes we know words, but we don't know really. So we can learn all this dogma, doctrine, and still we don't know. The personal experience will give life to these words. You can read the scripture and you don't understand nothing. If you have a personal experience with this, you understand much better. And for sure, more understanding, more you love the Lord. Because you start to understand for what He has done for you and what He represents in this. So we need both of them. We need a good doctrine, and for sure, as a human beings, we are communitarian beings. We are not separated from each other. We are persons, not individuals. So the community is very important. But in order to have a real community, we should have all the kind of personal experience with each other and with the faith that we believe. This can be a strong community, a living community. Because you can be together, but it's not a community. The people are together in jail, but they are not a community. They are forced to be together. So we need both of them.
Your Eminence, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
That was inspiring indeed.
Thank you, thank you.